Now, with these different indigenous faiths, they generally have associated with them in some manner elements of animism and or pantheism. Now, what animism refers to, this is the belief that elements in the physical world have a spirit or a spiritual nature. And the good example for this is in North America, like the Great Plains Indians, they believe this true with, say, for example, the bison, right? Or in North America, near the Appalachian Mountains, right there, right? That's associated with, say, for example, deer. Or down in Central America, the Mayans and the Aztecs, this was true with the sun, right? And the reason animism came about is that it was associated with the principal food source. So these peoples were worshiping that which sustained them and then gave them life, regardless of whether it was buffalo or corn or, say, in the Pacific Northwest, the salmon, right? So naturally they would worship that which would sustain them, that food source. Now, pantheism is a little bit different than animism. This part of the word pantheism, right? Theism, what this is the belief in God or gods. If it's just one God, then it, of course, would be monotheism. If it's plural, then it would be polytheism. Some of the different prefixes we can put in front of theism, right? Monotheism, one God, polytheism, many gods. But when we put pan in front, it means everywhere. Now, this is different than the Christian belief of the Holy Trinity, where God is three persons. One of them is the Holy Spirit, which is everywhere. This is not that. What happens here with pantheism? This is the belief that God is an element of the physical world. Now, notice the belief that God is an element of physics, not in. So, example for this would be that a volcano would be a god, right? That'd be a perfect example. Now, with many indigenous faiths, what we see are things such as mountains being associated in pantheistic, right, cultures, religions that were worshipped, or say, for example, just like we just used, right, a volcano. Now, what this is an example of something we touched upon earlier. This is an example of an archetypal symbol. So if we think about the world, right, and this marvelous artwork, right, we think about the physical world. Here we are. This is us. We're just little things. So then we know that the deity, right, not here, it's always going to be higher, heaven, right? That's where the heavens are called the heavens, right? So then what people started to do is they started to realize that with mountains, I'll go ahead and label that, or if you're a better artist than I am, draw a good mountain, right? Mountains are elevated, right? Or say, for example, a volcano is elevated. So by going up and climbing the mountain, these people believed that they were coming in to interact with the deity, and they're physically becoming elevated. Same thing with volcanoes. Here in the Southeast America, there's mounds, right? They're the same thing. They're associated with this. They would not build, mountains, of course, they're people, so they built mounds, and they'd be associated there. And as we go through history, right, then we get to the Egyptians. What did the Egyptians make? Right, they made pyramids, right? That same idea of elevation. And this is why today Christian churches have what atop the building? Oh, that's a terrible building. Terrible church. Don't build a church like that. The steeple, right? This is that same idea. So this is an example of archetype, right? It's that elevation, that physical lifting up for the participant. So this is what we would see with the different indigenous faiths. Now, when we start to address some questions for the indigenous faiths of North America, what is the ultimate reality? It's important to remember with the background here that the ultimate reality is associated with the physical world and nature, because these people were in much closer relationship with the physical world than we are today, right? We really don't stop to think about food because we just go down to the grocery store, and we don't think about meat as being once upon a time being a living thing. We just think about it as being in that little plastic tray and then wrapped with saran wrap, right? That's what we think of as meat, but it really comes from an animal, right? So, but animistic and pantheistic cultures would have a much better understanding of this, and in fact, they would many times be eating that which they worshipped, which is a really interesting idea to think about. That these indigenous faiths, say for example, would worship the salmon, or would worship corn, or worship the bison, and then they would kill their god. So in order to do that, they would have to make an appeasement. They would have to make an offering to that spirit that they just had killed. That spirit had willingly given up its life to sustain them as being the food source. So they would say something very closely related to what many people in their homes today say as grace. Exactly right. A lot of people think that it's just, the major world religions that say grace before eating. False. These indigenous faiths would also say grace because they were eating that which they were worshiping them. That which they worship sustained them in a very real way, day in and day out. So it's because of this we get some important visual of those arrows that kind of go back. So with these arrows, it's to let us remember, easy way to remember, easy little visual about the idea of a reciprocal relationship. And with the reciprocal relationship, what that refers to is balanced. You never want to take out more than you put in. Everything relies upon something else. That's what we mean by a reciprocal relationship. And that's how we should live in the world according to indigenous faiths in North America. So in the next lecture, we'll pick up the third question, and then we'll move into the indigenous faiths of Africa.